What's up, y'all? Welcome to my channel. This is part two, so to speak. So this is my edition of we're going to talk about how to request your student loan records because right now it's important that you're getting your hands on your student loan records. But this part, we're going to talk about the credit report because there's a lot of things when it comes to your student loans, and the credit report is a huge component of dealing with your student loans. A lot of borrowers are finding out the status of their student loans based off information on their credit report, but it's important that you understand how to read the information on the credit report and understand what exactly does it all mean. First and foremost, before we get started, my name is Tammy Arrington. I am the owner of Tammy A1 Consulting. The information that I provide today, we're going to go directly to the source of information, but I have to put this disclaimer. Anything that I provide to you today does not constitute any financial, legal, or personal advice. I created a guide that goes along with this series that I'm calling myself doing, where you're able to get your records. Not only that, if you are someone who is in need of an attorney, because I am not an attorney, I got information in there that on how you can get connected with one. All right, let's get started, okay? So we're going to go directly, well, first and foremost, if you're someone and you have federal student loans and you're here and you don't quite understand what your credit reports mean, first and foremost, make sure you are pulling your official credit reports. You can pull your official credit reports just simply by going to www.annualcreditreport.com. This is what the website looks like, okay? And here you're able to request all three reports from Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. This is where you hit the request your free credit reports. And it takes literally less than 10 minutes to get all three of your reports. You're able to save the reports, download them directly to your computer. That way you have the ability to go through each report and get familiar with the information that is there. Okay. So when it comes to the student loans on the credit report, it can be a lot of information on the credit report. And the reason being, depending on how you took out your loans, or if the loans are consolidated, that is where you get all the extra information from. Once you consolidate the loans, when you pull your credit reports, you may still see the old accounts that you had prior to consolidation, and it's just so a zeroed out balance on every single one of those. But anything going forward, as far as the consolidation loan, that is where you'll see the balance and all of the information that's connected to the loans. I have yet to pull a credit report and see where there was accurate information reporting the costs every single account in regards to student loans. I have yet to see that. So pull your credit reports. First and foremost, they are free. You can get them every single week. And this is where you're going to start to go through the information to see what's happening with the loans. Not only that, to make sure the information is correct. Another thing I want to say, because when it comes to the credit reports, and like I said, most borrowers are finding out about their student loans through their credit reports because they are now in a default status or they have went into a collection status. When it comes to federal debt, it doesn't just go away. I know there's a lot of information on the internet that may make you feel like that this debt, it just goes away or you ignore it, it goes away. That is not how it works. So we do not want to be ignoring our student loans. You want to make sure that if there's something that's going on and those loans are in a default status, there's a collections debt collector that's coming after you, that you understand, what's happening, because we don't want to pay for anything that we don't owe. And when it comes to these accounts and with these debt collectors and the Department of Education, we already know how messy it has been with transferring information all around. There's just a lot. And it's important that we get these records. This is why I created the guide, to get these records. So that way you can see if they are coming after you to pay for an account or to pay on your student debt. You want to make sure that you're paying what you owe and nothing more. Okay. All right. So let's talk about how to actually understand the credit report and when you're looking at these loans, because we have the different types of loans. And like I said, depending on how your loans were dispersed when you went to school, that is why you may see a bunch of accounts. Because when it comes to when you go to school, first and foremost, and especially if you're doing 4 years, then that is where you get those different quarters. And schools do things differently. But throughout, if you're going through those 4 quarters, you could potentially take out 8 loans, which means for every semester, however the school um, disperses the funds, then if you're there for 4 quarters, then you could potentially see 8 loans. And you continue to go to school, you'll have more and more and more of those loans, especially if you haven't consolidated. But the student aid website is the best resource for information. And I know the student aid website, there's a lot of information here, but as you start to click around and get familiar with the website, then you'll have an understanding of what you're looking for. Now, if you're someone you just don't understand how loans work, you don't understand how any of the information, any of the loans that you've taken out, how any of that works, what you do is you go to studentaid.gov, and right here, where all your tabs are, this is all the information that will help you. So there's your loan forgiveness. If you're going back into repayment, if you're dealing with any defaults, that is where you go. But under grants and loans is where we're going to go, because it's important that you have an understanding about those subsidized, unsubsidized loans if you've taken out. And here's where we're going to click on loans. And this is where it's going to tell you about how your loans operate. Not only that, how the interest and everything that's connected with that loan, all the information that you need. And they tell you as far as what the loan is money that you borrow and you must pay back with interest. If you apply for financial aid, you may be offered loans as part of the school's financial aid offer. When you receive a student loan, you're borrowing money to attend a college or career school, you must repay the loan as well as interest that accrues. It is important to understand your repayment options so that you can successfully repay your loans. If you're someone and you have a student that is entering into college, it's important that they understand this information. A lot of us, when we attended school, we didn't have an idea of any of this. I had no idea about the student aid website until I got well into probably my later 20s or so, after I had already took out student debt. And it's important that if you have students that are going into school and they are going to be applying for financial aid, that they have an understanding about this information. So this is where we can go and learn about loans, okay? And this is another part that's extremely important that, you have an understanding about. And it tells you what type of, well, first and foremost, fast facts. When you apply for financial aid, you might be offered loans as part of your school's financial aid offer. They tell you more is money that you borrow, you must pay back, and that where the student loans can come from. They tell you all the different type of loans. So when you're looking at the credit report and you see this information about a loan and you're like, okay, what exactly is that? This is where you can go to get more information about what type of loan it is that's reporting on your credit report. But this is one thing here. You don't need a credit check or a cosigner to get most federal student loans. So we already know that you don't even have to have any credit in a sense to get federal student loans. And this in it within itself, listen. But we still want to know. We still want to make sure that even if they're giving out hundreds of thousands of dollars without a person even having doing a credit check, which means to see how financially responsible you are, then we already know how the system was built, okay? But here is where you can click on the types of loans. If these are the type of loans that you have, then you want to know exactly how that works. You want to know how that interest works, because if you're requesting documents, you want to know exactly when you're looking at that paperwork and you're looking at how interest was calculated, when those loans were transferred, then you know based on the type of loan that you have, when interest would have started on this loan. Because direct loans and direct unsubsidized loans, they tell you are federal loans offered by the Department of Education to help you cover the cost of your education. Now, they tell you how these loans work and how the interest will be paid. So under a direct subsidized loan, the Department of Education pays the interest on a direct sub loan while you're in school at least half time for the first 6 months after you leave school, which is your grace period, and during a period of deferment, a postponement of loan payments. So when you are getting your documents from the Department of Education, when you're getting your documents from the loan servicer, these are things that you're going to look for. You want to make sure that interest was not accruing during these times that you were in school, because we know that we are not dealing with a perfect system here. So this is why we're going to check this information. And then we have information right here directly from the source on how interest should be accruing on these accounts. So this is for your subsidized loan, okay? Then we go to the unsubsidized loan. It tells you who can get it, how much can you borrow, who will pay interest. You're responsible for paying the interest on a direct unsub loan during all periods. So what that means is that as soon as that loan is dispersed to you, as soon as a unsubsidized loan is dispersed to you, this is going to be accruing interest immediately. So we want to take a look at that. And you want to look at that interest rate during that time frame to make sure that during the periods you were in school, because you're doing your comparison work, especially if you are someone who is dealing with a defaulted loan, the last thing you want to do is not do your checks and balances in the department, because when you're in default, they're coming at you hard. There's no longer playing around. They're not looking for that monthly payment. They're looking for the entirety of that loan. So if that's the case, then you have the right to look over those records. You have the right to inspect those records to see exactly how you are being charged. So you want to make sure that you are doing that. And that means knowing when that interest was applied, the dates that it was applied, and doing your comparison work. Not only that, when it comes to the information that is on your credit report, remember, we can get our free credit reports from annualcreditreport.com. But when you're looking at student loan accounts on a credit report, usually it's truncated. So that means that you're not able to see the full entire account number. And when you're looking at student loans on a credit report, they can be confusing because some of the amounts are similar. like I said, the account numbers aren't complete. But what you want to do is when you log into your student aid account, when you log into that loan servicer account, you're also going to do the comparison work there as well. Because the information that is on your credit report, it has to be accurate, it has to be complete, and not only that, the information has to be verifiable. And as you, as the borrower, or you are the one with the credit report where this information is being reported, not only are we now dealing with the Department of Education, with the loan servicer who has reported the account, you're now dealing with a debt collector, which is the agency that's coming after you to collect on a defaulted student loan. So you want to make sure that the information that they are reporting is correct, because when they report information to when they report information to these credit reporting agencies, they are subjected to the provisions of the FCRA. Not only that, to the FDCPA as well. When it comes to anything that is happening with student loans, anything that's dealing with your credit reports, all of this is about processes and procedures. Even if there are notices that are required to be sent to you by the Department of Education, there's still procedures to that as well. And I always stress whenever I do these videos, if you have a student loan account, you want to make sure that you keep all of your information up to date. Because when the Department of Education is sending you out any contact information, any notices, they send that to the last known address or email address that you have on file. They're not required, in a sense, to verify that if that is still accurate. As long as they send it out first class mail, then it is considered as received. So you, as the borrower, as the one that's going to receive the information, you want to make sure that all of your information with them is up to date. Every single piece of information, your name, your address, your phone number, and your email address. So that way, if there's anything that's being sent out to you, they are able to communicate with you. When it comes to the Fair Credit Reporting Act, like I said, the information on the report, these agencies, if you're dealing with a debt collector now that is coming after you for a federal student loan, one thing about it is that if you have not read the FCRA, I advise you to go through the quickest way for me. I ain't gonna say the quickest way. The easiest way is to go through the contents of the FCRA, and it tells you basically everything that you need to know, depending on what is going on with you. First and foremost, you have to know what is the purpose of the FCRA. And they tell you that. What is the congressional findings? What has Congress found? And what is the purpose of the information that Congress has found? And we know that this is the Fair Credit Reporting Act and accuracy and fairness of credit reporting. Congress makes the following findings. So what this is telling us is what Congress has found. Why do we need the FCRA? The banking system is dependent upon fair and accurate credit reporting. Inaccurate credit reports directly impair the efficiency of the banking system, and unfair credit reporting methods undermine public confidence, which is essential to the continued functioning of the banking system. An elaborate mechanism has been developed for investigating and evaluating the creditworthiness, standing capacity, character, and general reputation of consumers. Now, mind you, we know that the Department of Education, they don't do a credit check for most times with federal student loans. So they're not looking at you to see what your creditworthiness is, standing capacity, character, or what your reputation is when they're giving you these thousands of dollars in federal student debt. And most borrowers who have federal student loans, this was one of the first huge debts that they took out when you're like 18 years old. So just think about that at the time, where you were compared to where you are now when it comes to where your credit stands, the capacity of what you can get access to, what even your character is now. But they tell you more or less what the information is. But one thing about the FCRA as well is that when you have someone who is furnishing information to the credit reports, there's a section that's specific to them as well. And that's where you're going to go to section 623 of the credit report. And that gets into the responsibilities of the furnishers of information to a consumer reporting agency. So all of the MOHELAs, the Advantage, ED, or whatever I can't even think what the name of the other services are, but whoever the services are that are reporting this information, that are furnishing information to the credit reporting agency, there's section 623 speaks about what it is that the duties of them as a furnisher of information to the credit reporting agencies. And you want to go through this to make sure that that has been taking place, or that has happened. Not only that, in your state, you have state laws as well that can coincide with the FCRA. Not only that, with the FDCPA. The state of California has some amazing consumer protection laws, like, oh my goodness. There's other states as well, but California is one in which I've been overlooking theirs, and they have some very strong consumer protection laws. When it comes to the FDCPA, again, all of this is about processes and procedures with everything that is happening. When you go to the FDCPA, they give you congressional findings. What has Congress found as to why we need the FDCPA? And they tell us right off the top, there's an abundant evidence of the use of abusive, deceptive, and unfair debt collection practices by many debt collectors, not by a small amount, but by many. And if you have read anything or you know anything about the Department of Education and those who they work with, there is a boatload of information on deceptive practices, them mishandling student information and data, misapplying payments, all kind of things, forbearance steering, just all of those things that you need to help and even more support you. And I hope encourage you to start reading over the information and requesting your documentation from all of these agencies, from all of these businesses and companies that you're requesting that information. And like I said, I created that on my website. You're able to get the entire guide in order for you to request the records. I've already written it out for you. There's a video prior to this one that you can also go and look at where I show you step by step on how to request the information. And yeah, I hope that this helps. But what we have to do right now is just to make sure that we are protecting ourselves. Not only that, knowing that we have rights out here as borrowers and that, these companies, the Department of Education just can't sit and just do anything that they want to do to you. That is not how this works. That's not how it works. I don't care what you see online or on the news. There are regulations, there are laws that are in place to protect you as a student loan borrower. There are laws and procedures and processes in place to protect you as a consumer. And you just have to know what those are. And not only, and knowing what those are is one thing, but enforcing it and knowing how to actually do it. So I hope that this helps. And like I said, you can get the guide directly on my website and all the information. You just cut and paste it in there, go a video back, and you'll be able to also see where I walk you through on how to request the information. All right, y'all.